All right, welcome back to our COE training series in video format. We are picking back up where we left off for our first video, and the focus of this video will be the athlete zone. We're going to assume that you have either read through the first guide on account creation or watched the previous video. We're going to be logging into an account that already has access to the athlete zone. So we're going to assume that you are in either the UAT or production environment for the portal. We're going to go ahead and log into an account that we already have access to. So we're going to log back into that account that we created in our previous video for account creation. And we should land on our athlete zone. Excuse my email popping up. So the first part of this video, we're going to focus on just general navigation. So we've logged into our account, and here we can see a variety of different tile squares, as well as our action bar here at the top where our menu is. We covered this last video and last training, but if we needed to update our profile information, we can do that here where we see our name under the drop down. Here as well, we have the Contact Us page. If we click on that, it'll bring us to a general contact page for our program. Here we're just seeing an email and phone number for Special Olympics Pennsylvania. If we needed to reset our password, we could do that here or sign out of our account. Where we see Athlete Zone, we can treat this kind of as our home button. So we click on this, it'll bring us back to our Athlete Zone. This is where our athlete users can use to get back to where they were when they first logged in. Under competition events, by clicking this, we'll see a list of competitions that are within our program. This may or may not be turned on for your program quite yet, depending on where you're at in the onboarding process. But by clicking this, we're able to see all potential competitions that are available in Pennsylvania. Under My Teams, this is where an athlete could see the teams that they're a part of. If we had any listed here, we'd find the name, you click on it and see additional information about that specific sports team. Click back on our Athlete Zone homepage. We'll see some more important things for the athlete checklist that we'll get into in a moment. Volunteer with Special Olympics, where an athlete could click and see additional volunteer opportunities that would relate to them, as well as their past events and upcoming events. So events that they've registered and have completed, and then events that they are currently registered for that haven't started yet. That kind of sums up the general navigation of the athlete portal. We'll dive into a few of these sections more in depth as we go, but for right now, that's just a very quick overview of the navigation for Athlete Zone. We're going to dive straight into arguably the most important part of the Athlete Zone, which will be our athlete checklist. This is where an athlete will log in and complete things like the health history and release form. They'll complete any additional requirements that your program may have in order for that athlete to become eligible for participation. Let's click into the athlete checklist. Here we'll see our athlete checklist and currently one incomplete item that this athlete user will need to do in order to be eligible for that athlete role. So this checklist is configurable by you and your program. So for right now, all that's required to become an athlete is the health history and release. But if you had additional forms, this is where they would be displayed as well. We can see what the name is of the item under the checklist items, health history and release. The source will indicate what role it is. So right now we're applying to be an athlete. If that role was for some reason different, that would indicate here as well. We see this a lot in the volunteer zone. You might be applying to be a Class B volunteer or applying to be a coach. The source column will always indicate what that role is. Our third status column is where we see the status of that specific checklist item. Right now it's incomplete, meaning that we haven't started this, it's not completed, it's not approved, rejected, etc. It just means that there it exists on our profile to start the process of. As we go through this initial process, we'll see a variety of different ways for the form to be completed, or the different statuses, I should say, of the completion of it. So we'll see submitted, approved, rejected, missing information, and all of those we'll explain as we go. But right now, we're just seeing incomplete. In our large tile here, we see my completed items. We go here, we'll see a listing of any potential item that we've completed. So if we think about the history of an athlete who's competing for a long time, they'll have quite a few listed items of forms that in their my completed items. So it'll say, their health history, they completed it last year, it was approved, and now it expires on this date on this year. So they'll be able, from a visual standpoint, be able to see the status and expirations of all of their forms associated with their participation. We're going to go ahead and start the process of the health history. I'm going to explain a few of these questions, primarily the style of how we collect information from an athlete and what's expected for an athlete to provide when completing it. Just to start it, we'll click on the blue hyperlink here, and it'll load our health history. Big thing, we are going through this from a perspective of an athlete who is over the age of 18 and their own guardian. We'll see kind of a little bit of a difference at the end when it comes to the signature form, but primarily for this focus, it'll be an athlete over 18 who is their own guardian. And the process of this is, the athlete is answering questions specific to their own participation. Start it, we'll read through this, click let's do this. I'm beginning answering any of the questions that are asked here. So this first one is associated conditions. If they have a condition, they'll click add condition, and this drop down box here will come up. They can select any of these items. Autism. If they have more than one condition, they'll repeat the same process and add another one. If their condition is not listed, they can indicate other and then describe it as, jingle bell fever. Or in the case of Bellatrix Lestrange, witchism. Once they've added all of those conditions, they can click save and continue. A big note here is that these are not required questions on these first few that we're looking at. So in this case, for mobility devices, if the athlete doesn't have any or use any mobility devices, they're not required to answer it, and they can just simply click save and continue to move on. Same thing with lifestyle aids. They click add lifestyle aid, indicate whatever, submit it, adding as many as they might need, or describing the other devices or aids that they use. Communication devices, same process. These are all very similar types of questions. So if they have one, then they add it. If it's not listed, they add another. Now, in these types of questions, we've got yes, no questions. So this is a required question. So if I were to try to move on, save and continue, it won't let me move forward until I've answered this specific question. Is there anything you can't eat or drink? This is an example of a if yes, then please explain. So if I click yes, it'll tell me to specify, I can't eat aloe vera. Or if I don't have any dietary requirements, I click no, I can move on. Same thing, assist devices. If yes, please explain. If no, select no, and then you can move on. Awesome, 38% of the way done. We're almost there. Big note here is that at this point, the athlete can take a break. This information is saved. So at any point during the answering of the questions for the health history form, If an athlete needs to take a break or it's dinner time, the system and the portal will save all previous information that they've entered. They will have to go back through those questions and just validate that the information hasn't changed since they went to dinner, but the information is saved at all times. So this is a good place to take a break if they need to, and then come back to the health history and complete the rest of the questions. This, we'll just keep on moving forward, answering all of these questions for additional conditions that they've had or do have. They answer yes or no. Same thing, we can see that these are required. So if I try to save and continue, it'll tell me no, I got to answer all of these. Additionally here, this is a great training piece, is we've got these little information bubbles. If an athlete isn't quite sure what a bleeding disorder is, they can hover over with their mouse or their thumb or whatever finger they're using on a mobile device, and it'll give us a little bit of information specific to that condition. Athlete will go through, answer all of the relevant information specific to their health history, click save and continue to move on. We made a call out to this during the account creation guide, but because this information is getting saved, you as a staff member or a coach as a support member can be walking through this process with them and kind of understand what questions are on and answer questions that come up. Here again, we can see the information bubble or additional information on what a head injury or a concussion is. Red asterisk means that it's required. For the concussion question, if we were to answer yes, it asks us to specify how many we've had in our lifetime and then the date of our last concussion or head injury. We can select a date from the calendar icon here or enter in our most recent head injury or concussion. Severe allergies, that requires the use of an EpiPen. We select yes. It'll give us a drop down here where we can select some pre-filled allergies that are pretty common. Drugs or medicine, we can select all if we need to. And then if it's other, or we have a specific drug that we're allergic to, or latex, pollen type, whatever that may be, we can enter in additional information here. Feeling really creative today, so that's what you're getting. Again, click save and continue to save that information in the Dynamics app, and then move on to the next question. For limited participation in sports, user selects yes. They indicate what sport they have limited participation in. Gymnastics is a popular one with AAI. Save and continue to move on after specifying any specific sports that they cannot participate in. Seizure disorder, what the seizure disorder is, the specific kind. If no, takes away that text box, allows them to move forward after clicking yes. I apologize for all the notifications you're potentially seeing. Behavior, mental health, or sensory conditions, if yes, specify this box. There's no really a limit on how much they can type. The user can move it around, whatever best fits their screen that they're using. Treatments, can add a treatment here. If they take carbamazepine, not even going to try to pronounce it. Dosage, how frequently they take it in an integer format. We are working on an enhancement to change this for integer and a text field, so you can type once or number 1, and then how often you take it, daily, weekly, so on and so forth. Click submit, add it to it, and then repeat that process for however many treatments that the athlete needs to take on a daily, weekly basis. Save and continue. For these signature form questions, they can indicate if they have a religious objection to receiving medical treatment. 3 options here, yes, no, or prefer not to answer. and then consenting to blood transfusions. So it's saying if yes or no, you consent to blood transfusions. Save and continue to complete that question. For the evaluation and research question, we're asking anybody who completes the med form, whether it's the athlete themselves, parent or guardian on the behalf of an athlete, or a coach completing it for an athlete, we ask them whether or not they would like to share this information for potential studies by Special Olympics and some of our partners that we work with health. The default here is no. So if the athlete or parent or guardian or coach would like to share this information, they can indicate yes, that they'll share health information about the athlete. Click Save and Continue. And here on this screen, we see a summary view of all the information that we just entered. What this does is provides the athlete or the person completing the health form a summary view of everything that we've put in and allows them to update information if we need to, add more treatments, I do have diabetes, enter up that information. Just gives you one last check through of all the information that we've entered in before we click Save and Continue to submit our form. So once we do this, it's going to bring us to the signature portion of the health and history release. So I mentioned this when we started, but we're going through this as somebody who is over the age of 18 and their own guardian. So for what we're going to see is that I can sign these forms, both manual and e-sign, on my own behalf through the integrated Adobe Sign process for e-sign, and then the standard process of downloading the form for signature for ourselves. Two big differences, as over the age of 18 and their own guardian will be allowed to sign these forms on their own behalf. But if the athlete is under 18 or not their own guardian, they will go through a process of sending the e-signature form to a parent or guardian to sign on their behalf. We'll see this in a later guide of that Adobe Sign process through sending it via email in our next guide for Circle of Care. So hang tight for that. But right now we're going to go through the two different versions for manual sign and e-sign to attest to this information as an athlete. By clicking manual sign, we'll go through the process of what it looks like to download the form, wet signature, and then re-upload to the portal itself. On this page, we'll see some additional information. If we're completing this on our phone, gives us a little bit of additional information on how to complete it. If we're doing it on the computer, it'll give us information on how to download it. And if we're not seeing the form, some pop-up blocker information. This is definitely a training piece of, depending on your browser settings, it might block that pop-up of the form. So just double check in the top right of your browser for a pop-up blocker that'll happen for the download. Once we're ready to download the form, click Download Form. You can see down here it's processing our request. And here in just a second, it'll download the form for us. Start completing. Let it think for a second. Maybe. Maybe times 2. Check something real quick. Here we go. So another option is we can see that mine didn't load out, but if I click continue to upload, I'll be able to access that document right here in our documents box. If I click on this, it'll open up that form that I just clicked. A second to make sure it loads. So I'll have access to it via this screen as well. But this is what the form should look like for the athlete registration form. It'll come pre-populated with all the information that we completed when we first set up our account. including all of the information that we've just entered in on the health history form, all of our answers, etc. And then from here, the athlete completing a manual signature will need to click the print form. They'll print it to whatever printer that they have, sign it, upload it back to their computer, and then navigate back to the portal to this screen that we're looking at. So if an athlete, was logged out in that time, took a couple days to sign this, to get the signature, they're back on their athlete zone landing page, and then they go back to the athlete checklist, and then navigate back to the health history and release. They'll see this manual sign. Continue to upload. And then they're able to upload the form by clicking that button. Choose the file. Just use the same one. Click Add Files. Okay, fine. I won't name it the same thing. Let's find a random file here. Click Add Files. And now we'll see that this is a new file. Obviously, it should be, the actual health history, but I'm using a different PDF to sign it. And then click Submit Sign Form. I'm going to go back a few pages because I want to show the process of e-sign. Show this again. So this would what it would be look like if an athlete came back and needed to update some information. They're going through it for the first time. They'll just have to go through the questions and verify information if it's changed. So again, it'll take you through the summary view page. So we can see all the information that I previously entered is still saved there. I'm just verifying that it hasn't changed in the 10 minutes that it's taken me to complete it. Through this, and obviously, completing the health history for the first time isn't exactly the most, quickest process, for lack of a better phrase, of completing it. But what's nice about the COE portal is that once we complete this for the first time, we're not going to have to go through and answer all of these questions all over again. We'll have all this information saved, and say that we're coming to the renew process. Once we come to renew it, we're getting a view very similar to this, where we're just updating information. Okay, in the year that I've done with the current health history, I've been diagnosed with a bleeding disorder. I can indicate yes here and just update from the summary view. Say that happens, and now we're ready to do an e-sign form. The inverse of the manual sign is our e-sign format. So by clicking this, it'll generate a PDF document for us to complete and sign. Once it loads, and it'll do a pop-up box in our screen right here. So both on a portal view or on a phone view, if the athlete's using a mobile phone or an iPad or something like that, it'll pop up. And then like what we're looking at right now from a computer screen, it'll pop up in the same portal window and then give us little directions here that we can see in the blue arrows of where to start. I'm an athlete. I am signing this on my own behalf. Once they've typed in their name, they can click apply. And we can see here is that the signature that I just typed is generated into that box. I click next, click on that box again, and it already comes pre-filled with the name that we already typed. And then what we just saw before it went away was another arrow telling us that this is the next button to click. So we click to sign. Great, we're all set. We have completed the signature for the athlete health history and release. We can close out of this window here by clicking close. You can't really see that on my screen. Sorry for the ping. They can click close here. And now they're good. Move our screen back over so we can see everything. And now we can click go home, back to our athlete zone, and then back to our checklist. So what we can see now is that our health history and release has gone from incomplete to now submitted. The current process for the health history and release is that it does need to be reviewed and manually approved by staff. That is simply because we're waiting for stipulations and requirements from SOI and SONA on the approval process with health history and release. So at some point, this could be updated to automatically approved if a user did the e-sign format. But right now it's in submitted. So this indicates to the athlete that they have done everything that they need to do and are awaiting review by a Special Olympics staff member. Hopefully, depending on this information, we'll see this go from submitted to approved. But additionally, the athlete will see if the form has been rejected or there's missing information or something like that. Typically, we'd only really see the missing information for a manual signed document. They forgot to actually sign it, or they only signed in one place instead of both the places, things like that. In my completed items, if we go here, we'll still see that this has not been completed. The form won't populate in my completed items until after the form has been approved. And if we switch gears to our Dynamics backend and we go to the related forms, here we can see that related form that's been submitted and all of the answers that the athlete provided on their form. We'll cover the approval process of forms like this on a later training. So don't worry too much about the dynamics side of things until we get there. Okay, so now we have pretty much accomplished everything that we need to do from an athlete's perspective on the athlete checklist. We have completed our health history form and we have submitted it for review. We come back to our athlete zone. I mentioned earlier that we can also see my teams and competition events. Clicking competition events will give us a summary view of events that are coming up within our program. We've got this keyword filter here where we can filter out events that are in a specific area. We're only looking for events that are in 50 miles of our location. We can update those filters here or simply find our event here and click on it. Now again, we're going through this from an athlete perspective. So we're looking at our local sports competition E. We see all the sports and all the divisions that are currently eligible for registration. If we click into one of those, we'll see more information about the event itself and this specific division. But then down here where we see am I qualified, will indicate to any athlete user that only coaches can register an athlete for a competition. So from an athlete perspective, they can still see the competition events. They just might not be eligible to actually register for it and complete a registration for that division. We'll cover competition registration in the coach zone guide, but just definitely a big call out. Athletes can't register themselves for an event. In the My Teams, we don't have any teams set up right now, but if we did, we would see our team listed and the coaches associated with that. So we'll have visualization into our coach contacts if we need to. Back in our athlete zone, say like many of our athletes, they want to become volunteers and do more with Special Olympics. So if they click that, after it loads, maybe, there we go. So we have completed our initial application of being a volunteer. Now, big call out here is that because we have an additional view for the portal now, we are an athlete, but now we've also applied to be a volunteer. Where we initially saw Athlete Zone, it has been updated to a drop down where we see home button. So now we can alternate between the views of our checklists and our zones by clicking home and then the drop downs. Big call out is that because we initially registered as an athlete, whenever we log in, this athlete zone is the first thing that we'll see when logging in. Okay. We'll cover more of the athlete or the volunteer zone items in a later training. So this kind of concludes the athlete zone tutorial and video. So we'll close it up here, but again, want to thank all of you for watching and keeping up with your training. Hopefully this was helpful from a athlete zone perspective. We hope to see you on the next training, and I will stop my rambling now and this recording. Have a good day.